Queenzflip reveals that him and Joe Budden almost had a fight, and it led to his suspension.
He said, if you want to fight, whatever you want to do, we could do it right now. And da 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 da. I said, so what's up then, nigga? But his tone was more higher than mine at the time. Like it was more deeper. 10 minutes passed. I had to analyze. I was quiet on my phone. I was recording. That's what I was doing. We were separated far from each other, but it was talking. So what happens is like Joe's voice is powerful, and certain things. I was going to the story about on the balcony when we had our meeting, because we had our meeting Monday. I went back Tuesday. I was supposed to come back in July. We had our meeting and we were just arguing, man. Like, I'm talking about, the neighbors was looking outside. Like, they were looking outside, record, like the neighbors, like we were loud, using the F word, and I'm like,
Yeah, I remember y'all talking about that
yeah,
briefly. Yeah.
I like trying to play with my family, but you got to throw like that in there to see how neighbors care. Like, 10 minutes passed. He said, yo, when the last time you got into a fight? I said, right now.
That's right. On a recent space Flip did by himself, he revealed that him and Joe Budden squared up. They looked like they was about to fight, and it led to his exit for a couple episodes from the podcast. Now, this whole space needs to be studied, as it seemed like Flip was trying to express himself and really gives great insight into how Flip is on shaky ground with the podcast. He talks about a bunch of issues he's having with the pod, trying to fit in, and I must say this was an incredibly bad look. Now, I know a lot of you are going to say I'm taking this personal with Flip, but I'm really not. As I was listening to this space, I felt like he was making yet another mistake by trying to be too open and maybe manipulate the whole situation. Why would you ever reveal that you and Joe Budden almost got into a fight? It makes the show look unprofessional, and it makes Joe not look like the podfather he was proclaiming to be in front of that camera. And also, Ian Schwartzman was in the audience, and I found it kind of interesting that as soon as Flip started talking about him and Joe Budden almost fighting, Joe Budden appears in the audience as well. It was just a lot going on, and I think Flip could be headed for another suspension or eventual exit of the show, as this is a big breach, and I doubt the podcast wanted that to go public. On top of that, when Joe Budden arrived in the audience, I could tell that Flip made an effort to change the subject and started talking about the chemistry of the show. He kind of, like when your boss shows up, or when you like chilling in the office and you like having a good time, or you like wilding out a bit, making jokes with your coworkers, maybe being a little bit inappropriate, but then your boss comes in and you tighten right up. That's kind of what happened. And I think in time we will see that. I'm telling y'all, this really feels like the end of Flip's time on the podcast. It really does. I was shocked. I never thought Flip and Joe would get to a point where they actually want to fight. But if you look at what Flip said on the Patreon from last Friday, he was saying that people in the studio were hinting that Joe and Flip need to do this, with Vern saying that this is good, and Corey saying that y'all emotional. Really bad stuff. And Flip later on says that, he told the guys on the balcony that he cares about his family. Could he have said that because he knew that he had crossed the line? And it appears like they had squared off and it kind of chilled, but then Flip brought it back when they sat down on the pod, and Joe Budden on the podcast, not in real life, just on the podcast, said, "When's the last time you've been in a fight?" And Flip said, "Right now." Flip brought the fight back up. And to me, Flip is obviously somebody who's good at content. I know he's going to say I'm manipulating him, but that's not the thing. It's like he's good at content, but at what cost? Is it cost over everything, or is it content over everything? You cannot let your emotions overwhelm you so much that you want to fight your boss. This is the exact situation that Joe Budden suspended Rory for. And Rory never took it this far. A lot of that stuff was on air, which can be explained as content over everything. Hey, I said I wanted to fight you, but I never squared off with you. Flip actually squared off. And I think, shout out to Elevation, the YouTube channel. I think what his theory was that Flip was actually fired. And Joe Budden saw the backlash of Flip being kicked off the show. Or he saw how dry the show became in Flip's absence, and he brought him back. But what he just did right now, what Flip just did right now, saying that, oh, me and Joe almost had a fight, that could be the nail in the coffin. And I think even Flip doing all of these spaces is a sign that he's going through it, man. I've been studying Flip for a long time on the Joe Budden podcast. The last time he was on Instagram Lives and Spaces talking about his absence from the show, it was because he was in a bad spot. It was because he was in a similar situation. When Flip is going through something, he expresses himself through content. He doesn't have the control over himself that he thinks he does. He does that to justify his actions, right? Like I'm going to go on live and I'm going to talk about things and I'm going to manipulate the situation. When really what he's doing is he wants to talk about things and express himself because he feels vulnerable. Instead of releasing that vulnerable nature in an authentic way, he does it through content. And then he becomes the content guy and nothing really is accomplished outside of him expressing himself too much and revealing the inner workings of the Joe Budden Network, which is not good. You know, the Joe Budden Network, Ian and Joe have spent the last few years, ever since Rory and Mal's exit, trying to make the organization look more respectable, and this set them back a little bit. But let me know what you think about Queenzflip's admission that him and Joe Budden got into an altercation that almost got physical. And what do you think the source of the argument was that made it get physical almost? Flip keeps saying that he can't reveal because it would make him look crazy. I think that's what he's just saying so he doesn't have to say what really happened. At the end of the day, Flip won't be on the podcast much longer. All right, y'all. Follow me on Instagram, The Stop TV. Follow me on Twitter, The Stop TV. The podcast should take a break from Spaces. They're exposing themselves a bit. Probably be bad for my business, but that would be the best advice to those guys is like you going on Spaces and just revealing way too much. All right, y'all. Make sure you tap in with my Patreon. Oh, man, as the world turns. This is Danny from The Stop. Peace.